So this article also talks about the point that Wayne brought up. The increased grant could raise HDB resale prices. I mean, okay, maybe let us come from a first principles approach. What can help to curb the rise in HDB resale pricing? I mean, let's just imagine if you're a policymaker, what do you think you will do, George? I mean, okay, when it comes to, of course, policies, I think firstly, our government has been doing a great job. And if we come from a first principles approach, we also talk about this in my 777 sharing session, right? Like, a lot of it has to be because of the fact that we are now in a monetary system that whenever central banks print money, introduction of quantitative easing, the entire money supply just get flooded. Everything flows in a circulating portion into bond, stock market, and then it goes into hard assets like real estate. And of course, a lot of liquidity will flow into Asia, into Singapore as well. And of course, that will drive everything up. So just to give a contextual example is that when more money is being printed, more supply is printed, we can feel it through inflation. We can feel it through, of course, swelling of a lot of our maybe stocks and bonds and stuff like that. And because of that, we want flight to safety. We want to remove some of the gains that were made, some of the paper gains, and then we want to pump it into harder assets like real estate so that we can preserve it. But by doing the action, the asset prices get inflated. And of course, on all spectrum, landed, condo, HDB gets inflated, right? I think the state that we're in right now with like 13 to 14 round of cooling measure, I don't think we can go back. Because the moment we remove any cooling measures, our asset price will get inflated even more. So I think we are stuck already. So I think we are stuck in the sense that we have to sort of live with all these cooling measures
or rather, this is a norm, for
a very long time. Yeah, we just have to get used to it. There's no way our government can remove it. Okay, so now, if you were to be a policymaker, how will you come from a demand or supply angle to make HDB resale prices maybe go up slightly gradually? I mean, like not and how, what can we do to remove COV? Because COV is one of the thing that is stopping our next generation from buying because cash is a hurdle, right? Yeah. So yeah.
I think firstly, I believe that
Mr.
property
George Ping,
prices should
Ping.
property prices should gradually go up,
Right.
and it cannot remain stagnant as with our country's GDP as well. So but it must be in line and in check with against like Singapore GDP, right? If it starts to escalate beyond Singapore GDP, then I think that is something that is worrying, because we will then start to think of the next generation whether they can afford a house even, which is what is experiencing in some of the other countries where the younger generation, they are not able to afford, they can only rent. Yeah. So I think it's extremely tough to have a policy to say that how can we keep prices affordable, and I think government is doing a great job. If we increase the down payment by a lot, first timer will suffer. And I think the best way is to keep in check the supply and demand. And I think the policy to be made should remain flexible. For example, right now there is this 15 months cooling measure that was put in place to prevent the private property owners to buy into the HDB. In time to come, and that is also the reason why there's a lot of $1 million HDB, because they sell their flat, they have the money to just pay off everything. So if let's say, come to a point where there isn't a lot of demand, and to prevent the prices from dropping, then perhaps they could think of, I want to remove the 15 months now, and then to start to stabilize the market. But I think overall, it is still a matter of supply and demand, and whether can they be flexible to tweak the policy such that they keep the price in check.
Do you think the 15-month policy is a good policy? I personally think it's a very painful thing.
Fantastic policy.
It's fantastic, but I also think it's painful.
Yep.
Because there will be a class of families that will have so much pain. For example, there will be a class of family that is below 55 years old.
Yeah.
And they really just want to shrink and not have such a huge burden anymore on the private property, right? But they can't do that. They have to go and rent for 50
Yeah, I think that's a very, I think I totally agree with Melvin, because let's say, for example, the 15 months window is actually to curb people from going into a HDB with the cash that you have from a private property, right? And then to then inflate the price in a way. But what about families that are being impacted by this whole entire maybe I work in the tech industry and I got laid off, and I have to move off from my private property. I can't service the mortgage and stuff like that. Right. And then now when I sell it off, and I still got to go and pay a rent that is so high right now.
Yeah.
So it becomes a double whammy for me in a way. Yeah. So it's like I sell it off because I cannot service the loan, and yet now I got to pay a very high monthly mortgage a monthly rental.
Yeah.
So I think
how much is the rental of a Punggol HDB forum now? Is oh my goodness.
I think it's about
3,800 to
3,000 plus.
A 4-room HDB in Punggol that's not near to MRT is $4,000.
Yeah. I think it was.
Have you seen this before, Yurong?
No, not in the last
not in the last 10 years.
In the last 10 years.
Because right now rental rates is at its all-time high, and it affects cash flow. And when we talk about cash flow, I think it affects your livelihood, it affects your daily lifestyle as well. And I think that's what a lot of people. I think that's extremely painful, especially for clients that or buyers or sellers that are trapped in that kind of situation.
Right. Okay, from a macro perspective.
But I think by removing these 15 months right now, coupled with these additional grants,
it's too early.
It's too early.
I think it's gonna be crazy.
Okay, why do you think it's a fantastic policy?
Okay, personally, basically, right, I think the government is doing a very, very good job already, right, to try to stabilize HDB prices to make it more affordable in the generations to come. And the only way is to actually give more supply. And that's what they're really doing, right? The only reason is more like why price went up so fast is really more like a
supply thing.
Unexpected event. Like nobody expected COVID. Nobody expected COVID to last so long, impact so many industries. People stop work, China lockdown and all that. Delay the entire construction process. And that's why we saw a demand and supply, more like a demand change in the HDB market. Right. So generally I would say that right now, government is trying to do a catch up to fulfill and deliver whatever orders that they have. And once we come back to the normalcy of BTOs being able to collect on time, definitely we will see people are more okay to wait for the general 3 years, 3.5 years for a BTO. The resale market demand will reduce further and price will stabilize. And I think it's good that HDB prices still go up, keep pace with inflation, help our Singaporeans preserve asset, right? Because over the last since 2013 until 2020, 7 years, right?
It's
actually
stagnant.
It's going down and stagnant, right? And then I will if I'm a HDB owner, I will feel that my asset is decreasing. Yeah. And that's not too good as well.
And that season also there was this new realization that your HDB will go to zero. Still remember all the debate on news? Yeah. And I think now it's in a brand new and different season. How about George? What do you think about a 15 months policy?
I think it's painful, but I think HDB is also flexible in terms of exercising certain appeals, as long as they can show sufficient proof. And I think there's also quite a healthy cases where appeals are successful and buyers can still go ahead to purchase. So I think it's not all too bad, but it is still necessary to curb prices in check. And I think there's a lot of flexibility that's being exercised.
When do you think the HDB prices will stabilize? Final question. With all this in check, personally, I don't think in the next 12 to 24 months it might happen. I think probably.
What's the definition of stabilized?
Stabilized in terms of we don't get to hear a very high amount of COV, or in the sense that in terms of percentage growth, is in a healthier fashion. Yeah. When do you think it will stabilize?
Actually, I think in terms of COV value.
Okay, and do you think there will be an oversupply? I mean, when all the 100 to 150 BTO projects, when they MOP and all these are going to be completed by which year?
2024, 2025, some of them that are delayed.
And you add another 5 years.
Yeah.
Probably in 2030. You're going to have a huge amount of quantity of BTO that hits the MOP stage. So do you think there might be an oversupply?
Okay, so many questions, right?
and all this will affect the prices, right? Yeah, because I agree with you.
The nuggets are here.
We have to ensure that we can bring the nuggets in. We have to ensure that so what we're going to do is that we're going to have nuggets to announce that the episode is ending. Yeah, because these nuggets on the go.
And it's not sponsored.
it's not sponsored by McDonald's lah, but we all love McDonald's. Yeah, since young. McDonald's is the best marketing company ever, right? Because
They
even
are
my
real
kids love
estate
I don't know why. Like
Everybody
everybody,
a happy meal. You know, you start off being a happy meal.
why is it that even my kids, right? When you talk about McDonald's, they have a sense of happiness. Like even for me also, I
You
don't
have a
know why.
toy. Like I mean, like you go for you have like a freebie.
Is this like subliminal marketing from young or stuff like that?
Yeah.
But we
Because
just love
yellow.
McDonald's.
I think the color yellow sparks happiness.
I still love
Sparks
Filet-O-Fish.
joy.
I don't know why.
Yeah, sparks
Okay.
joy.
Anyway, okay, all this has implication on, but of course we cannot think too far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to solve the next 3 to 5 years problem. We also want to make sure that everybody has a chance to purchase their own property. Yeah. So, but when all this property hits MOP next time, what do you think will happen to? Would there be an oversupply that will cause price to stagnate or it will go down? Last question.
Okay. Well, I think this is like many questions within one question. But I think
Wow.
generally, HDB, I think if it can like continue overall like HDB price index, you know, like at a 3 to 4%, 3 to 5% every year, I think that's a good growth rate.
Right.
And I think like the key idea here for the HDB development board is to make sure that HDB pricings are affordable lah. Right. So I think that is very important. And feel free to
Somebody just type McDonald's target kids. Yes, they also target adults as well.
Yeah.
Come. Okay, sorry.
Okay. I lose my train of thought. Right. Okay. So generally, where was I?
The percentage point increase 3 to 4%.
But then percentage point increase is one thing, right? The other thing will also be in the sense that like HDB's intention is to keep it affordable, right? End of the day is they want to make sure that almost everyone has a home, right? It's not the main point on whether there's enough price increase for like upgrade, but most importantly is there is like a housing need, like a shelter, so that Singaporeans can feel safe, right? So that's one thing. In terms of MOP, you know, like every year we are going to expect like 20 to 25,000 units averagely that were MOP every year, and this is starting from 2019 because we first launched BTO in like 25,000 units, Mr.
Really,
Gomu right, in 2011. And we have continued since lowest is like 17K a year. Every year we're launching units, right? So, of course, we're going to expect for the next 10 years, there will still be about 20 to 25,000 new units to come, right? And I think Singaporeans like new stuff, lah. Definitely, right? So, all these MOP units, I think will still have an
Very
attraction
popular.
point, right? For people who want to stay in a newer HDB, they don't want to have like concerns over they'll outlive the HDB, CPF usage restriction, the rule of 95, loan restriction and all that stuff, right? So I think overall, pricing will still go up for HDB. I hope that with all these measures, it could stabilize to a healthy growth rate by end 2024. I think that is a more
Realistic time frame.
expectation.
I think
Awesome.
while Yurong can go and eat the nuggets, right? This is my thoughts and opinion. I think
Okay.
to answer the question of whether will there be oversupply, I think we need to look at a few things. Number one is, will the current owners want to upgrade to a private property? And where will the price point be, right, by 2030 for the private property? If everything remains status quo, that means the TDSR remains status quo, the stress test remains status quo, and then salary of the current homeowners increase gradually such that they can afford a private property. Let's say by then a 3-bedder is 2 over million. And if they can afford, given that the economy has been increasing, then I think there will be a lot of movement. So that's, I think, the very first factor. The second factor is whether will the population still continue to grow, and will there be, for example, new PRs that will come to Singapore and then they want to buy their first like HDB, and whether the grants will still be there for them to leverage that will support the HDB upgraders in line with their income to move to a private property, and whether will there be an oversupply of the private properties as well. So I think all these will then be able to allow us to answer whether will there be an oversupply of the HDB.
I personally don't think there will be oversupply of private properties, because if you look at the amount of supply, actually now we have a shortage of supply.
Yeah,
For GLS.
correct.
And also in line with the white paper, that's definitely going to happen, I think, by 2030 is 3.5 million Singaporeans, 3.5 million
Yep.
PR plus foreigners, so total 7 million. So
Yeah.
But I think I mean, whatever policies is in place now is good to solve it. We're also having a very interesting conversation to end off today's episode, right? Last week we talked about in future, who will be the people that can afford private properties if everything goes on like this, right? It is basically, if you look at our TDSR being stagnated now, is now actually getting increasingly difficult to get a loan because of the escalating new launch pricing. So what might happen in future, I mean, one trend that we need to monitor is the existing people that owns private property will be the easier people that can own private properties in future.
Right.
Because it might get increasingly difficult for HDB upgrades to move up to new launches. If all 3 bidders are at least 2 million, 2.5 million,
Definitely.
it is a very high mortgage for the average Singaporean. And maybe what might happen is that the resale properties that are of a lower quantum might be absorbed at a more rapid speed. Yeah. Then if our wages don't go up in line, then in future we might have like a disparity gap. Right.